Most people never ruin their lives in one dramatic moment. They slowly drift away from the person they could have become, not because they failed, but because they repeated the wrong small choices every day. If you feel stuck, tired, or quietly disappointed with where you are, this is not another motivational speech. This is a mirror, and what you are about to hear may change the way you see your life from this moment forward. There is no explosive moment that announces one person is moving forward while another is slowly being left behind. There is no bell, no dramatic signal. Everything happens quietly. Two people wake up on the same morning. They have the same 24 hours, the same familiar worries, the same pressure of life. Yet years later, the distance between them is so wide that even they cannot explain why. The difference is not intelligence. It is not where they started. It is not luck. It lives in choices so small that no one notices. One person chooses to get up when the body still wants to stay down. One person chooses to turn off the screen a little earlier. One person chooses to read a few pages when the mind is already tired. One person chooses to walk for a few minutes when the whole day has felt heavy. These choices are too small to be praised, too ordinary to be recognized, yet they quietly rewrite the trajectory of a life. Most people do not fail because of one big wrong decision. They drift because of hundreds of small decisions never made, not because they chose something bad, but because they did not choose something better when it offered no immediate reward. Life does not push anyone off a cliff overnight. It simply allows inertia to take the lead. And by the time you realize you are standing still, the world has moved farther ahead than you imagined. The most dangerous thing is not making mistakes. The most dangerous thing is the feeling that today looks exactly like yesterday, when everything seems fine, when there is no crisis, when there is no obvious reason to change. That false stability puts many people to sleep inside their own lives. They are busy, they are tired, they feel like they are trying, but deep inside there is no real movement. Those who move forward do not wait for motivation. They understand a cold truth. Motivation comes after action, not before it. They do not ask whether they feel inspired today. They ask which promise they will keep with themselves today. And they choose promises small enough that failure is unlikely. That consistency creates a different kind of energy, quiet, unshowy, but durable and trustworthy. Those who are stuck often believe that one day they will change when things become easier, when there is more time, when there is more energy, when there is more motivation. But time does not carry answers. It only amplifies what you repeat. If you are delaying, time will make you better at delaying. If you are avoiding, time will make fear grow larger. The decisive moment is not when you feel ready. The decisive moment is when you realize that if you do not change something small today, you will face a much higher cost tomorrow. From that moment, the question is no longer what you want in the future. The question becomes who you are choosing to become right now. Kong Ngui Duk Dai Tin Rang Tai Doi Phai Nin Tai Nge Rang Neu No Luk La Dung Te Ket Qua Phai Sut Hin Som Va Neu Kong Tai Ji Sai Ra Te Ngia La Min Dang Di Sai Hung Nim Tin Do Len Loi Vau Kash Ban Dan Jia Ban Thun Va Quoc Sung Tao Ra Mot Ap Luk Vo Hin Buok Moi Tin Bo Phai Chung Min Jia Tri Gay Lup Tuk Nung Thuk Te Kosu The Doi Van Han Theo Mot Qui Lut Hoan Tuan Kak. No one becomes healthy after a single workout. No one becomes wise after one night of study. No one builds real stability from one good decision. Anything that truly matters needs time to sink into the inner system of a person. The problem is that you are living in a world that worships speed, where everything is measured by fast feedback, causing slow processes to be labeled as failure. The biggest trap of change is not difficulty, it is the phase with no visible signs. When you begin to do the right thing, life often does not respond at all. There is no praise, no reward, no confirmation. The early days look exactly like the days before, and it is this silence that makes many people conclude that their effort is meaningless. In truth, this is the most critical stage. Beneath the quiet surface, the system is adjusting. The nervous system is relearning. Old habits are losing control. An old identity is being challenged. But because there is no external signal, the mind begins to doubt. It asks why continue without proof. And many people quit right before the invisible process reaches the threshold where it can reveal itself. The illusion of fast change causes people to misjudge themselves. They believe they lack willpower, lack ability, lack luck, when the real issue is simply that they are standing in the silent zone of results, a zone where every effort is recorded but not yet allowed to appear. Those who understand this do not panic. They do not increase intensity to compensate for impatience. They keep the rhythm, they continue, they trust the process more than temporary emotion. Real change does not move in a straight line. It accumulates in the dark and then reveals itself quickly once conditions are met, like water slowly heating without changing form until it reaches the boiling point. Those who only watch the surface assume nothing is happening. Those who understand the law stay patient, because they know transformation does not announce itself. If you are doing the right thing and still see no results, it does not mean you are failing. It simply means you are standing in the place most people are not patient enough to remain. And it is here that the true difference between those who move forward and those who quit begins to form. Change does not begin with results. It begins with a small shift in how you see yourself. Every action you repeat does not just create a habit. It sends a quiet signal saying, "This is the kind of person I am becoming." Over time, those signals stack on top of each other and form what you call identity. The law of accumulation works silently, but absolutely. A small action today rarely creates a visible difference tomorrow. But when repeated, it becomes evidence. And identity is not built by intention, it is built by evidence. When you read a few pages each day, you are not only gaining knowledge, you are proving to yourself that you are someone who prioritizes understanding. When you keep small promises to your body, you are not only improving health, you are carving in the image of a person who respects themselves. Many people try to change their lives by forcing behavior. They set big goals, they push themselves, they fight against themselves. But when the inner identity has not changed, new behavior becomes temporary strain. It consumes energy and easily collapses. In contrast, when identity begins to shift, the right behavior becomes natural. You do not need motivation to do what aligns with who you believe you are. Identity does not change in dramatic moments. It is restructured in choices no one sees. When you do the right thing, even when no one is watching, you are strengthening the foundation. When you keep the rhythm on dull, ordinary days, you are building an inner structure more durable than emotion. That is where real strength is formed. This law does not distinguish between good and bad. It accumulates everything. Small habits that seem harmless are also writing a corresponding identity. Delaying once may not cause harm, but repeated delay creates the image of someone who does not keep promises to themselves. And that image, over time, becomes an invisible limit on every future decision. When you understand that every action is a vote for the person you want to become, you stop underestimating small choices. You do not need to do more. You need to be more consistent. And when identity is built correctly, results are simply a natural consequence. They arrive later, but they arrive with certainty. This is the point where change becomes irreversible. Not because you try harder, but because you have become a different person from the inside. Understanding the rules is not enough to change a life. The decisive moment lies in how you turn understanding into concrete action within very ordinary days. The problem for many people is not that they do not know what to do, but that they set the action threshold too high, making starting feel heavy and easy to delay. When an action is perceived as large, the brain looks for ways to avoid it. It creates reasons. It waits for a better time. It demands motivation. But when an action is small enough, resistance almost disappears. You do not need to argue with yourself. You only need to begin. And that moment of beginning opens a door that no amount of thinking can replace. Lowering the action threshold does not mean lowering standards. It means designing the path so that failure becomes unlikely. Walking for a few minutes instead of a long workout. Writing a short passage instead of finishing an entire chapter. Preparing a simple meal instead of trying to change an entire lifestyle. These small steps do not impress, but they create momentum. Momentum is what most people lack, not willpower. When you complete a small task, the brain records a win. It reduces resistance for the next time. And little by little, the right action becomes familiar. No forcing, no self-blame, just a natural continuation. This stage is often underestimated because it brings no explosive feeling. But its ordinariness is its strength. You are bringing change down from theory into real life, where everything must compete with fatigue, work, family, and unnamed pressures. When a habit can survive in that environment, it is no longer an idea, it becomes part of you. Those who move forward understand that they do not need perfect days. They need good enough days repeated. They do not seek emotional highs. They seek stability, and within that stability, a new person is being built, quietly but durably, right in the middle of real life, where no one is paying attention. Every lasting change passes through a critical point. It is the moment a person stops asking who caused this situation and starts asking what they are doing with it. Not to blame themselves, but to reclaim power. Personal responsibility is not a burden. It is the only doorway to freedom. When you believe circumstances determine your life, you hand control to things outside your reach. You wait for the world to change. You wait for others to understand you. You wait for better conditions. And while you wait, life keeps moving, not cruelly, simply without stopping. The feeling of helplessness appears not because you are weak, but because you are standing in the wrong position of power. The moment you take responsibility for your response, everything shifts. You may not control what happens, but you always control how you respond. And that response, when repeated, becomes a trajectory. No grand action is required. Just consistency in small choices, and you begin to feel the inner strength that was once neglected returning. Personal responsibility does not ask you to carry the weight of the world. It only asks you to be honest about your role in the current story. You do not need a perfect past. You do not need a beautiful explanation. You only need to acknowledge that from this moment forward, you are the one holding the wheel. And when you accept that, fear begins to fade. Clarity grows. Many people fear responsibility because they believe it equals pressure. In truth, the opposite is real. When you stop blaming, the mind becomes lighter. You no longer have to defend yourself against a sense of injustice. All your energy shifts toward building, and that is when you feel something very different. Not excitement, but stability. Real power does not come from controlling everything. It comes from the ability to remain steady in the face of what cannot be controlled. When you choose to take responsibility for your choices each day, you do not just change outcomes, you redefine your relationship with life itself, from passive to active, from reacting to leading, and from that moment on, the road ahead is no longer vague. It begins to become clear with every step you choose to take. No habit exists in isolation. Every action you repeat touches other parts of your life, creating a chain reaction you do not see at first. A small choice in the morning can determine the quality of the entire day. A decision at night can shape the energy of the next day. Habits do not only change behavior, they restructure the entire living system. When a good habit is established, it does not stop with itself. Clarity in thinking leads to better decisions. Better decisions lead to more effective actions. More effective actions create positive results. And those results return to reinforce the belief that you are on the right path. This is the ripple effect, quiet but powerful. The danger is that this effect does not distinguish between good and bad. A bad habit spreads just as quickly. Lack of sleep reduces focus. Reduced focus leads to rushed choices. Rushed choices create consequences, and those consequences make you even more exhausted. This loop, if not recognized early, will pull you downward without the need for any major crisis. Those who move forward learn to observe their own chain reactions. They do not look at a single action in isolation. They look at the consequences that follow it. They understand that what they do today does not only affect today, it is shaping the conditions for tomorrow. And because of that, they choose habits as leverage, not as obligation. When the right habit is placed in the right position, it begins to pull other things along with it. You eat better because you respect your body. You focus more because you sleep enough. You communicate more calmly because prolonged tension no longer dominates you. Not because you force yourself to be better, but because the inner system has been recalibrated. The ripple effect is why small changes can lead to large transformation, not because of intensity, but because of direction. When you place one brick correctly, the entire wall begins to stand firm. And when the living system runs smoothly, life is no longer a series of scattered efforts. It becomes an ordered flow, where each good habit naturally supports the rest. There is a phase that almost every right effort must pass through, yet very few people are willing to stay. It is the silent zone of results. You continue doing what needs to be done. You keep a steady rhythm, but on the outside, life gives you no sign that any of it is making a difference. No praise, no recognition, no visible change, only repetition and a sense of isolation. It is right here that the most dangerous question appears. Is what you are doing really worth it? The mind begins to compare. It looks toward paths that seem faster. It whispers that maybe you are moving too slowly. And if you are not alert enough, you will trade long-term progress for short-term relief. The silent zone is not a sign of failure. It is proof that change is happening at a deeper layer beneath the surface. The system is being rebuilt. Old foundations are being replaced. But because this cannot be seen immediately, the mind treats it as if it does not exist. And many people leave at the exact moment they are closest to transformation. Holding the rhythm during this phase requires a different kind of strength. Not explosive strength, but the strength of calm steadiness. You do not speed up to compensate for anxiety. You do not break the rhythm because of boredom. You simply continue doing what you have chosen, with the understanding that progress does not need to prove its value every day. Those who go far are not the ones with the highest motivation. They are the ones who can tolerate not being rewarded immediately. They understand that if they can keep the rhythm today, tomorrow will be a little easier, and the day after that, the system will begin to support itself. The silent zone is where a new identity is tested. No one sees you. No one cheers. There is only the commitment between you and yourself. And if you pass through this phase without breaking the rhythm, the difference will no longer remain silent. It will begin to show, quickly, clearly, and irreversibly. There is a very thin line between acknowledging difficulty and allowing difficulty to define who you are. When that line is crossed, the victim mindset forms, not loudly, not dramatically. It appears through familiar thoughts, such as you have already tried, that circumstances are unfair, that others are luckier. When these thoughts repeat long enough, they become an inner narrative that weakens every effort ahead. The victim mindset does not stop you immediately, it simply slows you down. It removes the sense of agency, it makes you react more than lead, and most dangerously, it gives you a reasonable excuse not to change. When you believe the cause lies entirely outside yourself, you no longer have a reason to look at your daily small choices. Letting go of the victim mindset does not mean denying reality. It means choosing a different position to stand in. From that position, you do not ask why this is happening to you. You ask what you will do next with what you have. That question shifts the entire flow of energy. It pulls you out of defense and places you into creation. Those who move forward do not see themselves as victims of circumstance. They see themselves as responsible for the next step. They allow themselves to feel tired, disappointed, uncertain, but they do not allow those emotions to become identity. Emotion is information, not a verdict, and when you learn to listen without identifying with it, you preserve inner freedom. Releasing the victim story is a repeated decision, not a one-time act. Each time you notice yourself blaming, you have an opportunity to return to a position of agency. Each time you choose action over complaint, you reinforce the identity of someone who has choice. Over time, that position becomes familiar. When you no longer see yourself as a victim, you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. You focus on building. You invest in supportive habits. You accept slow but steady progress. And from this new position, the path ahead is no longer a battle against the world. It becomes a journey of maturity, where every step is guided by clarity and agency. When a person maintains the rhythm long enough, something subtle begins to happen. Life no longer pushes against them the way it once did, not because the world suddenly changes, but because they have changed the way they move within it. The right habits, when sustained, create a form of positive momentum that allows everything around them to operate more smoothly. Momentum is not loud. It does not arrive in an explosive moment. It appears when you realize you no longer have to force yourself to do things that once felt difficult. You wake up with greater clarity. You make decisions faster. You hesitate less over familiar choices. The inner system has learned to support you instead of resisting you. When momentum forms, opportunities become easier to see. Not because they are new, but because you are now alert enough to recognize them. You listen better. You observe more carefully. You respond with greater calm. And these qualities make others feel more comfortable working with you. Relationships improve. Work progresses, not because you double your effort, but because there is less friction. Many people believe success comes from controlling every variable. In reality, it comes from building a foundation strong enough that when opportunity appears, you can step into it without losing balance. Positive momentum is that foundation. It helps you stay steady when things accelerate and remain calm when things slow down. The moment life begins to cooperate is not a miracle. It is the result of many correct choices repeated quietly over time. When you become the kind of person who acts consistently, the world responds with trust. You are given more responsibility, more opportunity, not because you demand it, but because you are ready. This momentum must be respected and protected. It is not sustained by intensity, but by attention. As long as you continue to maintain the foundational habits, the flow continues. And when life begins to cooperate, you understand something essential. You do not need to push harder. You only need to move in the right direction long enough. Once momentum is formed, it carries tremendous lift, but it is not something that sustains itself forever without protection. What causes many people to slip is not a major mistake, but the failure to recognize the small early signs of weakening. Momentum rarely disappears through a sudden collapse. It leaks away gradually. The leakage begins subtly. One late night that feels acceptable. One skipped habit justified by tiredness. One delayed decision that feels reasonable. None of these appear dangerous on their own. But when small exceptions turn into repetition, momentum begins to slow. And before you realize it, what once felt easy starts to feel heavy again. Those who move forward do not panic when the rhythm slips. They do not blame themselves. They observe. They recognize early. They understand that the task is not perfection, but quick return. Each time you return in time, you reinforce the belief that you are not carried away by temporary emotion, and that belief is what keeps the system stable. Protecting momentum does not require greater effort. It requires honesty with early signals. When focus begins to fade, it is a signal to rest, not to quit. When procrastination appears, it is a cue to simplify, not to push harder. Small adjustments made at the right time can save an entire, long-term process. A common mistake is trying to increase intensity when momentum declines. This often backfires. It adds pressure and strains the system. Those who are steady choose to return to the foundation. Enough sleep, minimal rhythm, preservation of core habits. They know that as long as the foundation remains, momentum will return. Early recognition is a form of intelligence. It allows you to intervene before things become complicated, and when you learn how to protect your momentum, you no longer fear slow periods. You know you have the ability to hold direction, and that ability creates a sense of inner safety, the kind that allows you to go farther without having to force yourself. Many people begin with intense determination. They change many things at once. They pour their energy into the early days, and they believe that if they try hard enough, results will arrive faster. But high intensity only has value for a short period. What determines the long road is always the ability to repeat. Consistency is not impressive. It does not create excitement. It requires you to show up even when there is no emotion pushing you forward. And because of that, it is the rarest form of strength. Silent discipline does not need to prove itself. It only needs to be maintained. When you choose consistency over intensity, you begin to design life in a way that can last. You do not force yourself to be perfect. You simply commit to not disappearing. Whether the day is good or bad, you keep part of the familiar rhythm, and that rhythm becomes an anchor when everything else shifts. Endurance is built through ordinary days, not days of major victories, but days when you do what needs to be done with no one watching. Days when you do not move far forward, but you also do not fall back. Over time, there are so many of these days that they create a foundation that is not easily shaken. Those who understand this do not chase explosive feelings. They seek reliability with themselves. Each time they keep a small promise, inner trust is reinforced, and that trust becomes more sustainable fuel than any external motivation. Consistency does not mean rigidity. It means flexibility in method, but firmness in direction. When you know you will return even after losing rhythm, you no longer fear mistakes. You simply continue, and that continuation, day after day, creates a quiet strength that nothing else can replace. At a certain stage, progress no longer depends mainly on willpower. It depends on the environment you place yourself in and the systems you build around your behavior. Willpower is limited and unstable. Environment works silently and continuously. When the surroundings support the direction you want to go, doing the right thing requires less effort, and resisting the wrong thing becomes easier. People often underestimate how much behavior is shaped by what is nearby, what you see first thing in the morning, what is within reach when you are tired, who you spend time with, what fills the empty spaces of your day. These elements quietly guide your actions without asking for permission. When the environment is designed well, discipline becomes less necessary because the system does the heavy lifting. Those who move forward learn to remove friction from good habits and add friction to bad ones. They make the right choice obvious. They make the wrong choice inconvenient. They prepare in advance not because they are extreme, but because they respect their own limits. A book placed where the phone used to be, a clear workspace instead of visual noise, a routine that starts automatically without negotiation. These small adjustments compound into speed. Systems are not about control, they are about direction. A system ensures that even on low-energy days, you still move forward a little. It catches you when motivation drops. It carries you when focus fades. Instead of asking yourself what you feel like doing, the system answers by making the next step clear. This is how progress accelerates without pressure. Environment also includes people. When you are around those who value consistency, clarity, and growth, those qualities become normal. You do not need to be pushed. You are pulled forward by what is standard around you. Distance from draining influences is not rejection. It is protection of direction. Leverage is created when one decision improves many areas at once. A fixed sleep time improves focus, mood, and discipline. A protected morning routine improves clarity, productivity, and confidence. When you choose leverage points, you stop scattering energy and start multiplying impact. Acceleration at this stage does not feel rushed. It feels smoother. You are not doing more, you are fighting less. The system is aligned. The environment is supportive. And because of that, progress that once required effort now feels natural. This is where growth becomes sustainable at higher speed. Not because you push harder, but because everything around you quietly helps you move forward. At a certain stage, personal effort is no longer the only deciding factor, not because you have become weaker, but because life always operates through systems. When you place yourself in a supportive environment, doing the right thing becomes easier. When the environment works against you, everything costs twice as much energy. Those who move forward do not rely on willpower alone. They design supportive leverage around themselves. They arrange their space to remind them of the right actions. They choose relationships that lift them up rather than pull them back. They limit exposure to distractions not through prohibition, but by reducing friction. Environment does not force you to change. It whispers every day. A book placed where it is easy to see. A quiet block of time that is protected. A stable daily rhythm. These elements do not create immediate results, but they make keeping rhythm feel natural, and when rhythm is easy to maintain, progress begins to accelerate. A good system does not require much thinking. It guides you in the right direction even when you are tired. That is the power of leverage. When decisions are made in advance, you do not need to negotiate every day. You simply follow the structure you designed, and that structure protects you from impulsive choices. Acceleration does not mean doing more, it means removing what gets in the way. When distractions are reduced, natural energy is released. When you are close to people who live with discipline, your standards rise automatically. No forcing, no comparison, just subtle adjustment, shaped by the environment around you. At this stage, change no longer feels heavy. It becomes a flow supported by systems. And when environment, habits, and identity begin to align, you no longer have to strain to move forward. You are carried by the very structure of life you have quietly built. When a person goes far enough on this path, everything begins to converge. Small habits no longer exist in isolation. They connect into a clear rhythm of living. You no longer have to think much about what to do next. Direction has already been shaped by the choices you repeat each day. At this stage, strength no longer comes from doing more. It comes from keeping things simple. You know which habits are essential. You know which boundaries must be protected. You are no longer pulled toward things that look attractive but feel empty. You choose stability over chasing novelty. And that stability creates depth. Many people believe that after changing for long enough, life will become easy. In reality, it becomes clearer. Difficulty still exists. Pressure is still present. But you are no longer confused by them. You understand how you respond. You know where to return to regain balance. And that understanding brings a different kind of calm, not comfort, but solidity. Convergence happens when identity, habits, and environment no longer conflict. You are not fighting yourself every day. Energy is no longer wasted on repeated decisions. You give more attention to what truly matters. And life, once chaotic, gradually becomes an ordered system. At this point, you look back and realize that major change did not come from a single leap. It came from not abandoning the small things. Real strength turns out to be very simple. Show up, keep the rhythm, protect the foundations you have built, and allow time to do the rest. When everything converges, you no longer need to prove that you are moving forward. You feel it in the way you live each day, calmer, clearer, and ready to continue, not because you are escaping the past, but because you are being loyal to the person you have become. This journey does not end with a loud moment of victory. It ends with a quiet but powerful truth. Your life is not shaped by what you understand, but by what you repeat. Everything you have just heard is not meant to create temporary emotion. It is a reminder of how life actually works. There are no hidden secrets. There are no shortcuts. There are only small choices made when no one is watching. When you show up on time. When you keep a promise without immediate reward. When you return after every loss of rhythm. These moments are what define who you become. You do not need to change your entire life starting today. You only need to choose one thing small enough to begin. One habit you can keep even on tired days. One principle you do not negotiate with yourself. When that is held long enough, it will pull the rest along with it. Not loudly, not urgently, but with certainty. This moment is where you decide whether you will continue living by inertia or step into a position of agency. Not through big promises, but through repeated action. Tomorrow does not need to be completely different. It only needs to be different from yesterday in one small but correct direction. If you have made it this far, it means a very deep part of you is ready to live differently. Not because of pressure, but because you have seen the truth. And that truth is simple. You become what you practice every day. Carry this choice with you when the story ends. No rush, no need to prove anything, just continue. Because from the moment you commit to the small right thing, your life has already begun to change. You have reached the end of this journey, and if you are still here, it means something deep inside you has been paying attention. What you just listened to was not a story meant to inspire you for a moment. It was a map showing how small, repeated choices shape your identity, your habits, and ultimately, the direction of your life. You have seen that real change does not come from motivation, intensity, or sudden breakthroughs. It comes from consistency, from showing up when no one is watching, from keeping small promises to yourself, from choosing the right direction even when progress feels invisible. These quiet decisions, repeated daily, are what slowly but surely rewrite your future. Thank you for giving your time and attention to this story. If it brought you a new perspective, or helped you reflect on where you are and where you are going, support the channel by liking this video, share it with someone who might need this reminder today, and subscribe to the channel for more deep, cinematic stories about self-mastery, discipline, and personal growth. Your journey does not end here. It continues with the next small choice you make, and we will be here with you for the next chapter.